Yeah, I don't think it goes directly live. Although it might, and right now maybe people are watching me say I don't think it goes directly live. And yes, they are. We are live. Hey
I was
everybody.
gonna say I was told, because I used to do, dancing and stuff, and they're like, the judges are always watching you, even when you're in like the side and the wings, like always pretend someone's watching you. So on the internet,
Yeah.
Ben, always pretend someone's watching you.
Or like the news interviews where like the moment they think they're out and then, they just start talking crap about each other and stuff like that. So hey, top music attorney. You well, yeah, you go by your. I guess are you Mrs. Crystal now? Sorry I guess do you refer to yourself that way? I've noticed that you're Miss Crystal in some of the music stuff, and are
I
you?
am. It's bled through because it's Miss Crystal as, the creator, which actually comes from my pageant days. And so it was like instead of Miss
Okay.
America, it's Miss Crystal. And so it's
Yeah.
just taking ownership of just me. And
Yeah.
as things have progressed, I then became like redhead attorney. I then became top music attorney. So now it's Miss Crystal, aka top music attorney.
Yeah. So I guess before diving into the agreement stuff, for anybody who's not who's never watched Top Music Attorney's channel, you should definitely watch Top Music Attorney's channel because there's a lot of really good advice on things like this, on what we're going to be talking about today. And it obviously goes even more into the weeds than we'll be getting today because I'm not an attorney and everything's going to have to be dumbed down for me. And you're also a musician, and you just released music. Am I correct in that?
I did.
Okay.
Even more fun than just releasing a new song. We did a remix challenge for our community, and I thought like two people would submit remixes. You know what I'm saying? Like no big deal. We did a little prize or whatever, and we got 150 remixes. And so then going through that process, we narrowed it down to 51. We did a big listening party with everyone, and then just trying to select the winners. Out of even just the top 20 was insane because people are just so talented.
Yeah. I also noticed, was it from your Instagram? You were painting something for a music video. That's fun. That's
Yeah, we
my
do artsy
life.
stuff. Come on, we talk, we music, we lawyer, and then we do artsy stuff.
Yeah. Uh, and what was the other question that I had? I had one more related. Oh, yeah. So some people might recognize you from me yelling at Splice on your behalf. From a couple, and Louis Rossman yelling at Splice on your behalf. And I just thought that was the funniest thing because I'm sure you get a lot of people just commenting on your appearance not being like a old white dude, so therefore you're not a real attorney or something, when actually you run a law firm and you're quite a badass attorney. And so I kind of felt like that may have had something to do with Splice's initial reaction with
Hmm.
how they threatened you and stuff. And I was just kind of like, that's kind of hilarious that obviously the teeth had to go back in the mouth once they realized that this was the real deal. And
Yeah, no,
uh,
I just, sometimes it's hard to distinguish where the attorneys are the ones that are getting feelings hurt because, really me being critical of the terms of service for Splice was me being critical of the attorney that drafted them. So I do believe
mm,
to a degree it was I offended the person that we ended up like speaking with, and it was literally the same person who filed the copyright strike on my video. Not to say it was a super personal thing, but I can imagine that there was something like that. And the truth is, they didn't have a basis to file the copyright strike. They were upset about what I was saying. They didn't, think it was particularly nice. It was the truth, and the truth prevails. You don't get to copyright strike something because you don't like what the person is saying.
no, yeah. Now I've had things like that happen to me, like just random copyright strikes and stuff when somebody doesn't like something to have it come down. But I've never had it come from an attorney. For some reason, I thought
Mhm.
attorneys were just kind of like understood the perjury part of filing a false DMCA, but uh,
Yeah, no, I
maybe
forewarn. I don't want to talk badly about other
yeah.
attorneys and things like that. But all I can say is I've just been horrified at just how dumb some attorneys are, and just that they don't understand. So for me there's a higher level. I'm sorry, like if you're an attorney, there's a higher level of expectation of your knowledge. And so when you, for example, violate the law by filing a false takedown notice, that's problematic. So
Right.
we dealt with it accordingly.
I imagine, I bet that there's also like a lot of attorneys who might be like IP attorneys from the 90s or something. That's like when they kind of were part of the scene, and now they don't really understand. They might think like, "Ooh, I have a way we could get this video taken down right now." They don't realize that that's like as old as YouTube itself, the false copyright claim to like get somebody to be quiet. But anyway, so the other day I am on my computer, or I was actually on my phone, and I get an email from TuneCore because I still have some albums up with them because I've been in the year-long process of moving my music elsewhere and doing other things with it, or taking it off of the streaming services entirely. And I got this email that, maybe I'll share my screen first. I'll show you the exact email. And this email is basically asking me if I wanted AI protection. And now, as somebody who co-founded a company that kind of does AI protection, but in a much different way. Like, we're just based on consensual AI, and I'm talking about voice swap for anybody who doesn't know. I was just kind of, and I read this and getting that email. All right, the opt-in. Yeah, and I was just kind of like, this is weird. How is this going to work? And then when I actually looked at the the text in you know what? We'll go through the actual process that I went through, just because I thought that it was a little bit deceptive. So let me present.
Yeah, and I was going to say, on my share right here, I think this is the actual email, but this is also.
Okay.
Oh no, there you go. You got it.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the email. Let me bring it up here. So. Yeah. And they just say protect against unauthorized use. Obviously, the protect your content by opting into TuneCore's AI and data protection program. And then when we click opt in, we have to opt in by September 6th. This deal's ending soon. That email doesn't even go to my personal, so I'm not worried about it. So yeah, you just click the opt-in button and then you're in, and that's it. Now, if you scroll down a little bit and you see all these terms, that's what we're going to be analyzing today. And from that point, I will share your screen.
Yeah, well, and actually, I would even say here, if you want to pull us back in, and so the 2 points we just saw in the email, let's talk about that kind of high level, and we'll and then we'll dive into the actual the terms and what they say.
These ones here.
Yeah. So number 1, protection against unauthorized use of your content. So when I read this, I go, okay, that's cool, because TuneCore is saying that it wants to essentially create TuneCore's content ID for tracking AI unauthorized uses of your music. That's so exciting.
And I was also like, how? Like, how are they doing this? Like, yeah, because like the technology doesn't really exist entirely yet. So.
Well, and so and we're going to look at how this works and why this potentially can be problematic. But what they're saying is that, we want to basically keep track of if there's any other AI third-party platforms using your content without permission, and we'll even sue on your behalf, and we'll even pay for it. Okay, so this is all sounding really good. And then the second piece, right, the second bullet point right there is we want to empower future opportunities. So they go, in addition to that, we are going to have you give us permission, if you're cool with it, to have your music trained by our AI. And we don't have anything particular in mind. It's just going to be for the different apps that we develop. And if we make money, we're going to pay you 50%. So, right out the gate, I'm like, okay, this is interesting, but it got scary. And we're going to talk about why it got scary.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, my initial thing right here was like, okay, well, this isn't possible yet. Someone at NAMM last year, I was in a panel with somebody at NAMM who claimed to have a company that did this, and he got kind of destroyed by the other panelists, including me. He's a nice guy, but I was like, what you're saying doesn't make sense. It's too easy to obfuscate this data. Like, you can't just have something that tracks down where it came from with any degree of certainty due to the way that generative AI works. And the best you could really do is what BMAT's trying to do right now. And then also with this, this is terrifying. Okay, so I'll share your. Let's get.
Yeah. So here,
there we go.
Yeah, let me go to this. All right, so guys, this is the actual terms of service. I got these from the website because it just is tricky. It keeps closing and opening. So anyway, to make this easy for this, I just plugged it in right here. So they just wrote these, and just to establish foundation here. Every time you click, I'm gonna opt in, the little I accept button, that is binding you legally to what the terms are. So that's why we care about what they say. And they even tell you, they go, hey, this is a legal contract. Okay. So they go, if you're going to opt in, you're agreeing to all the stuff we're about to go through. And then they go, hey, just a reminder that these AI and data protection terms, we could supplement them. Okay. There's going to be different times we make updates. And when we do, by continuing to basically like be on the platform, you agree to it. And this is where people just like, they don't see when things are, updated. And that's the problem. And so right now, at least what TuneCore is saying is that you can volunteer to opt in. And our concern, based on what we're about to show you, is, well, right now, you can opt in. But what happens when this just becomes a part of the terms? Yeah. By just using the platform, this is what you agree to. So anyway.
Yeah, that... I'm like... The quick side question here. Have you ever run into anything where like so I noticed, for example, I can't, like, when I just clicked through when I showed you like my steps when reading the email and then clicking the opt-in now button, like I didn't have to scroll through anything. It was just the opt-in button was but I actually had to press a button to see the terms, whereas the opt-in button was just right there for me to press and then I was in. Has that ever been a problematic thing? Like, if somebody were to fight this, to be like, hey, you didn't really try to explain to the artist well enough when you just gave them a shiny button and then a dark pathway to the actual stuff that tells them what they're,
Yeah, of course. And there's legal theories. I had a case recently, and it's one of those, the guy goes into the store and it's one of those right before you are signing, right? And you're paying and you're doing all the stuff. You click the button, right there. Yeah. And at that point, it's like, where our argument is he didn't have a chance to go and read a 40-page document at that point that he's standing in line and Tina behind him is like, hurry the F up.
Right. Yeah. Like when you get a loan on a purchase, when you go to Home Depot or something and they're like, do you want to finance this? And you just sign a thing. And it's like the finance term's like 100 pages. Like, how could you even ever in any universe know what you're signing? Yeah. Like how well does that stand up? And also, what if you're drunk? Right? What if you're like, oh, I was wasted at Home Depot when I was wasted when I clicked that opt-in thing? Has that ever been? Sorry, I'm going to ask you really annoying questions like this. Has that ever been argued? Questions. Like, or I was crazy. I was having a manic episode and I was clicked an opt-in to everything that day. Like, what does that ever stand up?
These are absolutely legal arguments. And in fact, because that does work, that's why literally at the beginning of this, in giant caps, they go, hey, we're reminding you, you are opting in. This is a contract. And so they're saying it so clearly so that even if you come back later and you're like, I didn't read the whole thing. They're like, okay, well, it's like literally right here in the beginning. So the reason is because literally that legal argument does work from time to time, but not always. And then you got to hire me. And then we're going to spend $20,000 to get to the point that I can finally be in front of the court to be like, hey, Your Honor, Ben was drunk.
Yeah, I'm just going to drink all the time now. That'll be the way. That'll get me through life easier.
Yeah. So we get into the grant of rights, and we're like, okay, so you and Ben, you still have some of your music on TuneCore. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So right now, and you did click the button, so it sounds like you are opted into this. Is that
no,
right?
I'm not opted in. I didn't click out. I clicked the opt-in email one just to see what that looked like, and then burned my computer screen after.
and then you pieced out.
Yeah, get it out of here. Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna look at it in the context of if you're super excited about this and you just want to make sure that it's good to go. All right, so. Grant of right, it goes, you're going to give TuneCore the right to do all this stuff on your behalf related to your music. Okay, so it goes, we can negotiate opportunities and licenses for your content. And then here's the thing. When you see words with a capitalized D, that means it's defined somewhere. And that somewhere is at the end of this agreement. And so what I did, just so I didn't have to like keep giving you, making you guys nauseous by going back and forth in the contract, I printed it out. So just so you know, they go, a data set is the music, it's the ancillary materials, so like it's your cover art. So you're giving the rights to the music, the cover art, the ISRC number, like all the things that come with your song. That's what that means.
Okay.
So they go, for purposes of, the grant, you're giving us the exclusive right to exploit or sublicense to our partners, our licensees, our assignees, or our agents. And I go into that and I go, okay, like who's TuneCore's partners? So I go to their definitions, and here they go, partners means any third party. Third party means, because then it goes
AI.
here.
Why not? Yeah.
It
Udio.
goes
Yeah.
from partners to third parties. It goes literally anyone, any person, any entity. So right now, for me in like lawyer land, my spidey senses are going off, and I'm like, okay, yikes. So you're telling me that I'm giving you the right to do whatever you want with my music. So this is scary already. Okay. So we go, all right. So this is what they're qualifying as the data set rights. So we're like, okay, well, let's go on. Maybe it's not scary. So all the data set rights are what is listed here. And they go, it's the right for us to copy, digitize, modify. So they're taking your song, Ben, and they're going to modify it. They're going to edit it. They can manage it. They can do whatever they want. And then also in regards to the music you're giving, they can license it during the term. But really important here, and I put it in red, they go during the term and after the expiration of the term and for the maximum of the life of your copyright. Can we go full screen for a sec? Here, I need to see your face. We need to talk about this. How do I don't think I have the button here.
Do you want me to do this?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay,
yes,
wait. So I'm not. How is that enforceable? That's my question. Is like how, like 50 years from now, how you'd be like, well, it was that one email where I was drunk and I clicked the opt-in. But I mean, really, how can you? I've never seen anything like that personally, where they're trying to enforce the terms of an agreement after the terms of the agreement have expired. Isn't that kind of redundant?
Well, and also just for me, if I was on the platform, if I'm you, and your music is now going to be used for this, I go, okay, I guess logically I kind of get this, right? Because isn't the whole thing with AI, it trains on your music, and once it's done training, it's not going to use your music anymore. It's kind of a done deal. But I go, okay, so you're going to have the right to license my stuff to anyone at any time. But then also, even after I leave TuneCore, you're done with TuneCore, you're going somewhere else. They still have your music. And so they're going to use it as they're continuing to develop, for example, their own software.
I'm trying to figure out, like, if TuneCore reached out to me, or let's just say like a company that I didn't have kind of a rocky history with, reached out to me and said, hey, we want your music for a data set for our partners. We're just collecting this. How much do you want? How much do we want to pay you for it? How much do you want? What I would quote them. That's what I'm wondering. Like, what amount of money would I ask for this? Because it would be kind of an insane price. Like, it would be in the six figures at least. And so just for TuneCore to like assume this because you didn't read the terms of, that's crazy to me.
And literally, for anyone watching this who makes music of any kind, what do you value your music at? Because here's the thing, they're waving the carrot and they're like, well, Ben, if you want to make 50% with us, it's going to be great. Just opt in. Okay. And then we're also going to help to protect your stuff. We're going to enforce on your behalf. And that all sounds super great. But then what we're going to get to here in a minute is they talk about what happens if they use your music to develop their own software, and then their software doesn't make any money. And I'll cut to the chase, which is they go, if we don't make money, you don't make money.
Yeah. We're in this together, TuneCore. All right. Boy.
All right. So that's where we're at right now. And then they go on. So they go, there's a publishing agreement if, for administration. So I guess TuneCore must do the collection of publishing. So like a BMI registration. Did you ever opt in to use that service through TuneCore?
The publishing? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This is a good point to stop off on that too. That this is interesting because what's interesting when I read that part, what I immediately thought of is how many problems I've had with the publishing administration on TuneCore from them copywriting me on my own content. From now, it's crazy enough to where there's a video of mine. I think it was a long time ago. I was reviewing Piano Tech, which is a piano plugin, and I played a few notes of one of my own piano songs in the video when testing it out, and I got copyrighted by myself on TuneCore's behalf. Then when I fought back against it, when I said, no, this is my music, I have evidence, TuneCore said, no, it's ours. And I was like, well, no. And then, TuneCore doesn't really have a support staff to deal with this type of thing. And so I just ended up not getting, essentially my own video got demonetized by TuneCore, and then I got paid a fraction of that back from TuneCore as the musician. It just,
Oh my
and it
gosh.
took a really long time for me to actually be able to whitelist my channel properly, and that happened like 2 years ago or something. But yeah, it was a nightmare for a long time.
Well, and if you guys are similar, hopefully not the same headache, but as it relates to just using the administration publishing service through TuneCore, just goes as it relates to the composition side of your song, which is a different thing. It's not the same thing as the actual master. You're also going to give us those rights. So you basically extend the permissions you're giving to us to use your music with the actual composition. Okay. And then they just go through stuff. They're like, look, you have to make sure you're being truthful. You are the representative of this, right? This happens with bands where it's like there's 5 people involved, and Susan was, she wasn't supposed to do something on behalf of everyone, but she did.
Right.
So just, you'll keep us posted. That's basically what it says. And then it goes into the data set, the rights and protections, the reservation of rights. So this is where it gets into, if you have a company that's saying that it's going to enforce rights on your behalf, like file lawsuits, that's great. And so it goes, hey, we're reserving rights. So far, I'm like, okay, that's not so problematic. This is what they would need to do if they're going to sue on your behalf. So section 1.4, dataset rights and protection, it goes on and it says the same thing we just read. It goes, without any prejudice to the rights already granted to us, pursuant to these terms, you grant to us, our licensees, our assignees, our agents. So let me just be clear about this. If I did a deal, so Top Music Attorney does a deal with TuneCore for whatever we're doing, like, a course, an online course or something. And so we're just being like business partners. I could potentially be an assignee. And so they're like, Crystal, we're going to give you rights to our data sets because we're doing this whatever. And so I could have control now.
Yeah.
bennjordan stuff.
Sweet.
So just for context,
agents,
that's
attorneys, that as well.
Yeah, throughout the world, during the term, which is the term of your agreement when you opt in, okay, and giving the exclusive right and authority to take action as TuneCore deems reasonably necessary. Now, what is problematic with this is that it's kind of selling it like they're your new lawyer, and that's not correct. Okay, I'm overstretching with that, but they're like, hey, we're going to help to protect you, but it says that they don't have to. They go, we reserve the right. We're going to have the exclusive right to do it, but we're not promising we're going to. So one of the things that could happen is that obviously there's just, mommy likes this other child better, right? So there might be preferential treatment of certain artists. And so I don't know to the extent it's really going to protect anyone.
Yeah, the exclusive right thing, I guess, that literally means that if I opted into this, then I couldn't hire you to represent me in a data set argument,
right.
I guess.
That's right. And then you got it. And then they go on and they go, well, you can, and we'll get to it, but they basically say you can send us a written request. If you go, oh my gosh, TuneCore, this thing happened. I want you to investigate. I want you to proceed. I want you to sue them, all the stuff. They go, we'll take a look for you, but we reserve the right to say no.
Wow. And considering like just how bad this company is at dealing with anything, like when somebody emails them, so just to be honest, like as, I'm sure we both have history with that and for different reasons, but yeah, they don't really have a support staff to deal with things like that.
Yeah. So if I'm just speculating, I don't know, but I'm just saying that it seems to me that if they're adding new, really administrative and legal steps to what they're doing, that's only going to worsen the issue that they already have. And this is where it says, it goes, you agree that nothing contained in this section obligates us to initiate a lawsuit on your behalf.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it also seems like you can't stop them from initiating a lawsuit either, which kind of goes back to the Content ID thing where, people would say, hey, I want to use your music for my video, I have a video game coming out and I want to use your music just in the playthrough. And I'd say, yeah, sure. And then TuneCore would demonetize the video or put a strike on them. And there's nothing I could do. And then, they'd be mad at me and I'd be like, I'm sorry. I just do. So that's, another thing where you can't sick the dog off of people if it's attacking someone.
Yeah. Well, and good point. And this is where they talk about that. And they're like, you can send us written notice. You want our help? Well, send us a nice little email. And then if we choose not to institute a claim within 90 days, so 3 months of receiving your notice at your own expense, you can then, of course, do what you need to do. So,
Wow.
it's just what we can say. Look, if I'm arguing, all right, let's be fair. I'm arguing on TuneCore's behalf, and I go, well, I mean, this is like really nice of them, right? Like you wouldn't have any option for most of us, you know, like artists, and certainly for me, you know, starving artist forever. I couldn't afford a lawyer, and so you know, they're making an opportunity. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it's, yeah, I'm still blinded by half of this. I just can't believe
well,
it's amazing.
we haven't gotten to the
Yeah.
financial terms just yet, so let's
Yeah,
talk
those
about
are
it.
great. Yeah.
Because we have two ways. There's two ways to for all you know, all of us to make money, right? So the first one is that they go, TuneCore shall retain 50% of any lawsuit that it brings on your behalf, and it's this net receipts. This is really important to talk about for anyone who, you know, doesn't use these words for what you do on a day to day. Net versus gross. Gross is all the money. So we sue,
Yeah.
we get $100,000. Gross is the total amount of $100,000. Net would be, well, we had to pay our attorney $75,000, so we're going to pay ourselves back first, which leaves
Yeah.
25. You see what I'm saying? So you know, they don't define what net receipts specifically means. Okay, so there's not transparency. We don't like that. But okay,
And that
I
includes
mean,
like the paralegals lunch and dinner every day for the month that they were, you know, like that includes, I mean, just from being involved in things like that, that really does, the amount of money that gets siphoned out of out of your settlement is when you're getting a net receipt is pretty substantial.
it could be, and I'm not saying they do this, but you know, there's overhead. There's like my
Yeah.
law office. I have to pay the building. I have to pay, you know, so
Mm-hmm.
that could mean anything, but let's pretend for a second, you know, they're not going to take on anything unreasonable, right? So
Yeah.
let's be fair. So what they're saying is we're still going to take 50% of anything we recover. Okay, I think that's fair if they're paying the bill. You know, with most contingency attorneys,
Sure.
they'll take like 35 to 45%. So that's about the same, right? So they go, but after our deductions of our duties and taxes, what does that even mean? So, you know, again, I'm beating this up all day long because you don't get to just say words that
Yeah.
have a
Right.
legal implication and not define what they mean.
Right.
So that's for the lawsuit piece. But now you and I are wondering because, you know, we're talking about your music, and I'm like, okay, well, if you're going to opt in and you're going to give this platform the ability to train its AI on your music, I'm just really concerned about what does that mean? Like, you know, is there going to
Sure.
be new AI versions of your songs out there? I don't want, you know, I don't want people sounding like you. So anyway, let's see what that means. So there's this experimental launch, and
Yeah,
just for
this is the
context,
crazy one for me. This is the one where I really got hung up on.
yeah, so they define in their little definitions here. Experimental launch means the limited launch of a product using your music. Okay, so TuneCore is basically going to just develop some tech. They're not really sure
Yeah.
what it is just yet. And so they go, if we develop some tech, we're going to train it on your music. And they have a typo here. They say contractor, they meant to say you. But they go, we're going to pay you 50% of any of what we earn. But they go, but if we don't get paid, you don't get paid.
Right.
Do you have any problem with that, Ben?
No, me, no, I don't like money. Um, so when I read this, I thought to myself, they're giving themselves like, but just trying to like suss out what they're actually trying to get at when they talk about experimental launch net receipts. It sounds to me like they're thinking about or have already planned on training a data set. Like they're just going to train their own model. That in this case would cost millions of dollars. It's a big undertaking. It's not something that's they're not just going to like tweak an existing model, probably because there isn't any open source models that they really could tweak with this contract standing above it. So they would pretty much have to train their own music model to try and compete with Suno or something like that, which really starts making me wonder. I guess just, you know, the pessimist in me is thinking like, okay, so like which one of their VCs, which one of Believe's or TuneCore's VCs came up with this idea? Because like I feel like that's probably what's happening because as we know, TuneCore is not really pulling in as much money as as I guess investors had hoped years ago. And so it makes me think if they're trying to just, okay, well, you can get all of the rights to this music. Let's make something that can compete with Suno, and if Senate actually rules that Suno is in or I mean Sony is suing a lot of these companies, right? And so like
Mm-hmm.
if Sony sues Suno and wins, then that means that all the dominoes are going to start to fall, and then TuneCore and Stability will be like the two ones that will still be allowed to be used, and only then will they actually make money back on the dataset training, because I can't see how they would. Yeah, I mean Suno, to my knowledge, isn't profitable. They're burning money. They're just burning VC because it's expensive.
Well, you said one time, and you're making such a good point. I don't know when we have a little chat if you want to go big so I could see your lovely face. But you make such a good point, and you're talking. Do you remember a conversation we had? And you're like, I kind of think that we need to like do away with copyright, sort of,
Yeah,
not really, but kind of. So
sure.
and I mean, to a degree, is that like where we're going with this? Because, I mean, even for the record labels, right? So you said Sony, it's also Universal, it's also Warner. Like everyone's coming together for the lawsuits against Udio and Suno. And, they're going, well, it's copyright infringement and there's no fair use and like all this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
equally, the AI platforms came back and they're like, yeah, we did it. We did have our AI train off of your music in public forums, whatever that means, Spotify or whatever. And so, like, in one group, we have like tech developers just being like, so what?
Yeah,
No big deal. And
sure.
then we've talked about, well, even with the upcoming administration and just being like they're very pro tech, right?
Right.
Trump is definitely in favor of that, and so if that's the case, then it would make sense to kind of ignore copyright or do away with it or change it or whatever. So then if we just kind of look at what TuneCore is doing here, we go, all right, if you're going to take the music that's on your platform and people are going to like opt into this, first of all, I have a question, which is they're asking you to opt in now.
Yeah.
Were they doing this already? Was this already in their
Sure.
terms and now
Sure.
they're just like
Yeah.
carving it out because they're doing a big rollout?
There's an interesting thing happened just yesterday. Somebody, so Blue Sky, that's where everybody from X and where Twitter is going. Somebody scraped a bunch of Blue Sky and uploaded it to Hugging Face, which is where a lot of data models exist and hang out, open source ones. And anybody can download it and there's provisions, like it says you don't want to use this to create bots, you don't want to use this to impersonate users, you don't want to use this for anything malicious. And I kind of threw a fit on Blue Sky about it. I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And a bunch of people responded saying, well, yeah, but private companies have already been doing this. But the thing is that if OpenAI just scrapes Blue Sky, they're breaking Blue Sky's terms of service and they could get sued. But if a random group of guys just make an open source data set, you can't actually go back and say when and where that information came from in that data set, and then OpenAI can use it. And it's like, that's how they're obfuscating everything. And so it really makes me wonder, and I know this just from VoiceSwap, all of the other voice cloning services, they're all using an open source model where if you ask them, well, what was this originally trained on? They can't answer that question because it was literally Japanese teenagers that did the original training, and they were just supposedly just going through Spotify and just grabbing vocals and training things. And so the second thing is, this is like one of the first questions I think before we even started, is like, in the wake of emergent properties and MLAI sentience, does AI content protection have any relevance? And it made me think to a couple of years ago, I went to Chicago to do a video on an algorithm, an AI algorithm that University of Chicago was doing, and I interviewed the professors and stuff, and it has a 90% accuracy rate in predicting when a crime will happen, like down to like 2 blocks in the city, and it could actually predict that a crime's going to happen on this night in this place. And hearing that headline, you're like, how does this work? I literally drove across the country to figure this out. And then I went to one of the neighborhoods that they were studying, which the professors and engineers had never visited because they thought it was too dangerous. Happens to be the neighborhood next to where I grew up. And interviewed them, and they said, well, we could predict it with 100% because we just talked to people. And it made me realize that the best way to predict any crime or behavior is to commit one.
Yeah, I
Like,
was gonna say, did you get mugged? Like,
right. Well, no, I mean, like the best, like I could predict crime within 100% on this property if I just smoke a joint. You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like it's, and so, but coming all the way back to copyright, you start having the most absurd philosophical conversations. When we have another comment here saying that IP is the only thing saving us from AI. Is this one the one? Maybe, yeah. Yeah, copyright is the only thing keeping AI from taking over completely. I don't think so at all. I mean, I think that I think it's a little silly that people are valuing the output of these models with something like generative art and music as much as they are. I don't totally subscribe to the fear mongering. I'm more scared of TuneCore than I am of the person who's generating music that might sound like mine.
Well, even with
But
this on, I was initially excited because I go, for me, I don't know if someone, takes, let's say, one of my songs and they upload it using Suno and they go, Suno, we want you to learn from this, create something similar. And then they upload a similar song. And now there's content ID issues and there's all kinds of just problems happening. And I go, well, I don't know. I don't have someone who goes and tracks, other people's uses and helps to protect me. So I was excited about this initially.
yeah.
Right. But how overreaching this agreement is where the concern is. So going back to the whole, okay, so they say the other way you can make 50% of revenues is you give us your music, we do the training, we develop some software, and then if it makes money, you make money. Now the problem is, conversely, if you don't make money, right, or if we don't make money, you don't make money. And I go, okay, so that means that there could be literally no benefit to artists to do this, to allow your tech company to use their hard created sweat, blood, and tears music to build your tech for free. Like, really, that's what we're saying.
What is there anything in this agreement that that binds you to? I didn't see anything that binds you exclusively. Like, obviously, they have the exclusive right to represent you in lawsuits, but do they have the exclusive right to your data for? Does that mean that they're assuming the exclusive right to your data for any AI data set?
Good question. So they go, you're giving us the exclusive right and authority to take action on your behalf. That's what you said. But they're saying you could still run away with your music. You can go elsewhere. When you do that, the rights don't stop, right? You already gave us the right. And if we license it to someone else, then that carries through the life of your copyright, which is your whole life plus 75 years. So it's a real long time.
Yeah.
And so that's where I go. So that means your stuff could pop up anywhere. And it's not clear. They're not putting a limitation. That's my problem here. They're not putting a limitation and being like, we promise we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. Like, we're not going to create a platform where people can now, like, we're going to become Suno. And so, like, your music won't accidentally be mimicked in some new song that is created. It's not saying anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess it's like you could create a data set with somebody else, but they have the right to sue them over it. Which is pretty, which is a good way of saying you don't.
Right. And then, as it goes on, we get into these sections where it's like, all right, and you promise, as always, that you're going to get the permissions from all the producers and labels and performers and everyone who works on your music. You're going to indemnify us. And this is the part that kind of made me laugh, because it goes on to talk about if TuneCore ends up getting a claim by someone else because of you, they go, you indemnify us, which means you pay the legal fees. And so if any claim ever happens, we're literally going to send you a bill. Yeah, and you're going to have to cut us a check for that. So it's tricky, because they're like, we're going to go and enforce your rights, but how do they know, if there's a claim against another claimant that's truthful?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, let's say DistroKid did this exact same thing, and then they claimed, and they accidentally they made a false claim. Does that mean that even if you didn't do anything, you would be responsible for TuneCore's legal fees?
Yeah. So, it's my job to always just kind of worst case scenario, because when a contract gives that much freedom, these things do happen. Yeah. And that's why, we talk about this. We go, okay, so what else? It talks about the liability. Under no circumstances can you find us liable for all these things. And they go for including negligence, right? So even if we're negligent, we do something, you can't sue us. If we lose your music, we lose your data, we cause you to lose money, you can't sue us for your attorney's fees, indirect, consequential, exemplary damages. And I'll say we do see stuff like this in a lot of contracts, right? They're just like the most aggressive protections possible. But that is what it says. You shall pay the lawyer's fees if there's any claim. Okay, we don't necessarily have a problem against that. But they get here into the term. And they go, the term means from the time that you opt in. So Ben, when we're done with this, you get so excited, you're going to go click that button out of your email. You're going to opt in.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, then starting today, that's the term. And it goes until the end of the expiration of when your term of when you distributed your music is, right? So remember, guys, we have like a whole other agreement that Ben already signed to have his music on this platform. So they go, when we're done with that agreement, that's when it ends, okay? Or the date of the expiration of your publishing administration agreement. So they go, that's the term, but also PS, remember the whole, it's going to keep carrying. It's that copyright. It's the life of.
Yeah.
All right. So you hereby agree, you acknowledge any rights granted to TuneCore that are licensed to a third party. Let me emphasize this again. Third party means anybody.
Yeah. Here are that are licensed to third. Yeah, that's partner shall continue full force in effect.
In perpetuity. So in perpetuity, meaning forever and ever and ever and ever. So there's some stuff in here that's problematic. And I'll tell you what, this is a part of why I got into just a feuding war with TuneCore. Mm-hmm. And it was because I went through their terms of service and I just, ripped them apart because I'm like, this is outrageous. Some of the stuff that they're doing, because, you can put stuff in contracts. And I'm like, Ben, you and I are going to do a deal. And I go, I'm going to bully you into signing the contract. And in the contract is going to say, I don't know. If you don't do something, you're going to have to get into a cold plunge every day for the rest of your life. And it's just something that's like very unreasonable. And at some point you could hire a lawyer and be like, I object to that term because it's so outrageous and unreasonable. Well, yeah, we could fight about it and maybe get it thrown out of the contract. And that was the position I took.
Yeah, I remember actually, I think I watched some of the videos that you did where you kind of broadly referenced a client where you were having a back and forth with TuneCore. And it did seem like they were kind of pushing, if I'm remembering correctly, I might be mixing up with something else, but it did seem like they were really pushing specific performance in some ways, like which is something that like I only have ever seen in real estate. Like the only time I've ever seen specific performance work in some way is like if you buy a house and then the seller tries to burn it down and disappears, then you could sue for specific performance to where you would just get ownership of the house instead of a settlement or something. But like I've never seen that in this. But yeah, the cold plunge thing.
Yeah, I mean, so this is how I do deals, Ben, just so you know. So you may have to cold plunge if FYI. But yeah, I mean, look, in just regards to, even the deal with TuneCore, it was that they had terms in their contract that I thought were unlawful. Like literally, they would not be enforced. And they essentially came back and said, okay, sue us.
Yeah.
And that's what we would have to do in order to get a court to say this is unlawful. We would have to sue. And so we did, and they lost and we won. That wasn't quite the story, but we wish.
Right. So look, more of a Mexican standoff type of situation.
And then we literally had another issue with them like right after that. Go full screen again, and I want to ask you a few questions here.
Sure.
Okay. So high level, as we're kind of chatting about this, we go, all right, so we can agree that there's unclear financial compensation terms. And for you, like, I don't know, at least just for the financial piece, how do you feel about it? Is there something that feels like it's convincing or it will be convincing for artists? They should do it. Maybe they'll make money.
I mean, I think that most artists are just that. One thing that I see everywhere is a panic about AI, about artists feeling like AI is robbing them of their livelihood, which I could argue both sides of. Like, I think it's wrong. I think AI is wrong. I'm against AI in using things without consent. At the same time, I think that your livelihood has been siphoned out by tech 10 years ago. I think that's gone. Unfortunately, I think that like it's 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 sucking blood out of an empty vessel. But that being said, so I do think that because of that panic, a lot of people will open that email and just click opt in. They say, I want protection from AI, when really what they're doing is sounds like they're giving up all protection for AI by opting in. Like, seems like they're just handing every right that they may or may not have, depending on how future rulings work with things like OpenAI and New York Times battling it out in higher courts, that they're just sort of handing out in perpetuity any sort of right that they may have clung on to. Does that sound accurate to you?
Well, my follow-up question is, okay, so should we just live in acceptance? So that's going to be the case. And you're right. There's a lot of people who are going to get that email and they're going to click accept. And at some point, like I said, I'm just curious, is that just, are they just going to make this part of their standard terms, right? Which most people won't read. So should we just accept it and do it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, no. Anytime you get any sort of agreement, especially regarding your music from TuneCore, DistroKid, Spotify, you need to, sadly, I want to say you need to bring that to an attorney, but that's expensive. Not everybody can do that, especially with how much musicians are paid. Every now and then we could have nice little attorney field trips like this one, where we can, have one attorney look at something that many thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people have gotten that email at this point. And I'm scared to think about how many people have clicked opt in. Yeah, but no, I mean, I would say absolutely not under any circumstances. Yeah, I'm blown away by I guess, for lack of a better term, I'm blown away by the balls that they have to assume that much from a button click. Like, it's more, like I said earlier in this stream, if somebody contacted me saying, hey, we want these rights that they outlined in that contract and we'll pay you for them, like me trying to think of a number of what I would ask for. I mean, it would probably be like $500,000. It'd probably be like a lot of money. Like, yeah. And just for them to sort of trick you into that is.
Well, and for me, I'm like, I've been critical of distributors in general because because bennjordan and Miss Crystal and all the other artists out there, in order for us to have our music on streaming platforms, if we want to have it on streaming platforms, we have to, keywords, have to go through a music distributor. So there's so much power and control that these music distributors already have. So we're critical of them, blocking you out of your accounts, taking your royalties because they're like streaming fraud and they're making claims that may or may not be true. So setting that aside, now we have this whole new thing where it's like, this is the first that I'm aware of. This is the first music distributor that's basically saying you can be a part of helping us to build our tech potentially for free by giving us your music.
Yeah, you could help us make a new Suno with actual consensual data, but it's not going to be any different. Just because it's consensual, that doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we're going to pay you for it. That just means that we're not going to be quite as legally problematic as the current services are, which draws back to what I was saying earlier, where it really makes me wonder what VC meeting resulted in this email being sent out in this whole program. Like, it really seems to me like somebody was like, hey, we're going to pull our money out if we're going to need that investment back, or we're not going to renew our investment unless you start something that competes with these larger projects, because that's where because they want to resell it to other VCs for more money. And so,
well, I think where I'm going to have a tipping point is, it's one thing if there's misinformation. And so people mistakenly opt into this because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm scared of the AI. I want to protect it. So they opt in for that reason, essentially putting their music, in my, experience, a little bit at risk just by doing the thing to de-risk themselves. But setting that aside, if I catch wind that TuneCore at some point just makes this automatically part of their terms, so meaning everyone has to, and then I find out that other distributors are also just doing it like this, I'm gonna hit the roof, because having to share. That's what it is. Having to share your intellectual property with a company when you don't have a choice is outrageous.
Yeah,
And
of
distributors
course.
are middlemen. We don't owe them shit.
Yeah,
They distribute your music and collect a fee.
right. Yeah, they don't need to exist. Like technically, they don't need to exist. Like they exist out of favors. like all this. It really
Okay.
makes me. Well, are you familiar with white label distributors? Are
Mm.
you? Yeah, like those. I wonder how many. Like I've thought of this before. Like, what if someone like yourself, you don't really have time for this, but if someone like yourself without as many uh, clients, went through a place like SonoSuite or one of the white label distributors, and every single time there was like a false copyright claim, you actually had a legal letter that would, and some evidence. You could say, here's the session, here's the and I wonder if how valuable that would be and how much the average artist would pay for it. Because I've had a couple companies that will contact me based on my past TuneCore thing, contact me saying, "Hey, we'll go to bat for you. We'll do this, but we want 15 to 20%,
Mm.
depending on the company." Which is, I mean, a lot of money. That's for me. That's trying to think how much that would. I guess 15 to 20%. That'd be like 10 grand. More than 10 grand. Yeah. I mean, that'd be like 10 grand a year that I'd be giving them, which is like, I would just rather not have music on Spotify then. Like that's just like the precedent of it is crazy. But it does make me wonder, like, how much. So that being said, I would pay like 2 to 3 grand a month for like a distributor that also had legal representation when
Mm.
false copyright claims or when false streaming claims came in or something like that.
Oh, well, it sounds like you just need to have a lawyer on retainer in general. But, you know, this is also why I'm just so big on promoting direct to fan, right? So direct to consumer model of it's cool if you want to use music platforms and streaming and all of that. But, I feel like the solution to all these problems that we keep talking about with Spotify and the lack of payment, and now there's a threshold of plays to even get your royalties in general. And now potentially you have to like sacrifice your music, into the
Yeah.
AI universe in order to just distribute your music potentially. And so what's the solution? Well, one of them is just go direct to fan. Just sell your music directly on
Yes.
your website.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even if you don't have the means to set that up, there's stuff like I've used Gumroad for like when the TuneCore thing happened. I just uploaded my entire discography to Gumroad and did a pay what you want thing, which is pretty similar to Bandcamp, I guess. It's just more of a. I'm a big, me. I'm a copyright. Uh, I'm all for abolishing copyright ultimately, and I love the idea of somebody downloading my music on a torrent on a peer-to-peer network and enjoying it, and then if they like it and if they want me to make more music, then they subscribe to my Patreon or something like that. I'm a huge fan of that.
When I interviewed you, one of the first times you shared, you're like, when I just said people can pay what they want for my music, you're like, I literally made the most money ever. And I was talking to you recently because I did release that new song.
Yeah,
And when we did the Say to Me release, we're like, we didn't even want to do Bandcamp. We're like, this is kind of ugly. No offense,
yeah.
but we're like the interface doesn't look super cute. You can't really design
No,
it. So we're
yeah,
like, you know what? Let's just try it. We literally used Wix, and Wix has you pay a little fee for the month or whatever, and then you can PayPal, Stripe, whatever, and so you get all your proceeds. And I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, let's just try this. And, for me, like not releasing music at all for a year and just being very inconsistent and whatever, I still made a lot more money than I ever will on
yeah.
streaming, like within the first
Oh,
24
for
hours.
sure.
So,
Yeah, no, that's that same thing happened with me with my last release that went on streaming networks. Yeah, I made more in a week on something like Bandcamp than I made in a year on streaming services. And again, it's not, I have millions per year. I don't remember I haven't looked at it in probably a year now since the last Spotify end of year data came out. But yeah, I mean, it was like, over 1 million individual listeners a year at least. And so, I mean, it's significant, but I've still made more from Bandcamp. So interestingly enough, there's something that this takes me back about 2 years ago. something that came from my YouTube channel and making a video about Spotify and how it's kind of a grift for investors at the time, and before they were like expanding out into exclusive content and stuff. But there was this big question of, okay, well, what are we going to do? We need a streaming service that is similar to Bandcamp. Like if Bandcamp had streaming, that would be great. And I was thinking, well, that's still a little problematic. But what if we had something that was a mix between a streaming service and a torrent site? And I think back to what.cd. if you I don't know if you remember that, but it was like the best place to pirate music ever. It had it was a torrent site, and it had, like, out of any place on the internet that had my music, that were if I were just to search for my own music, they had the most accurate display. Everything was down to the release date, to the exact day it came out. They had live shows, they had the dates, they had sometimes they would even post photos of those live shows. And this was across the board, pretty much any artist you could ever think of, stuff that's way more obscure that you could never find on Spotify because the person who made it is MIA and has been MIA for 30 years. And so it was the largest organized collection and archive of music ever in history. And of course, some feds raided wherever the main server was, and it's gone. But it was all existing on torrents, and it was all existing peer-to-peer. They didn't have servers for the files. It was just, between everybody else. And it's like that should have gone somewhere else. Like that really was the most valuable thing when mixing tech and music. To me, that was like the most valuable thing. And so I was like, okay, so what if we make a streaming service that uses a more modern version than your standard peer-to-peer torrent, something like IPFS, which is a file system that can run similar to how a torrent works, but it's more optimized because it's an actual file. So it's almost like having a Google Drive, but when you save a file, I get a chunk of it, somebody else gets a chunk of it. It can be encrypted to us, or we could just see it for what it is. And what if we did a streaming service that did that? That way we could have one main server that hosts people's music, but most of it can be offset on every other user. And then we could keep the fees. We could pay over 90% to artists of like what everybody's paying. Like you'd essentially be doing what you do when you sign up for a Patreon. You're just like, I want to support the artists. We would have Mike Pelchinski's royalty mechanism, the one that he uses for SoundCloud, where if you listen to an artist, they get paid for that. It doesn't go into a weird pool that, ends up going to some other artist. And the big problem, and I mean, if you go to my Discord, there's still developers who are like hungry to work on this. We had a prototype that actually accessed music faster than Spotify does on a server. Like it actually was like loading it faster on a web interface. But the big problem is then, okay, how can we charge people money on an iPhone without giving 30% to Apple? And so I contacted Apple and said, okay, hey, I run a nonprofit organization. My channel is a nonprofit. I contacted Google. Google said, we're most likely we can offset all of it and we won't take any of it if it's a nonprofit. There might be a slight, exchange for like a 2% fee for the actual credit card portion of it, but most likely we could do that. And Apple said, go fuck yourself.
I'm sure
We're
they
going to
did.
take it all. And so that was it. It was dead in the water. It's like either you have to tell every single person to jailbreak their iPhone to be able to pay artists, 100% of your dollar, or you have to pay Apple more than anybody else. In general, you have to pay Apple more than anybody else. And so, I mean, that's what I mean with middlemen. Is like you could come up with these great ideas that can compete and could actually exist. Like that's an idea that could actually get people who care about music just leave Spotify entirely, because you just have users hosting and creating the data in the same way that they did when they were so passionate about making the archive on what.cd.
Well, I'm not even saying that I have a problem with the fact that there are fees. I think there's always going to be fees, right? We're going to use services. We want to use something like PayPal or whatever. I don't necessarily have a problem with the fee portion. It's just that when there's something built around it that is inherently unfair, it's sharky, and the user doesn't know. And I'm tired of seeing this preying on the creator that like music is so important to our existence as people, like our life story. Like music is everything, and from there we build on the managers, the record labels, the touring companies, and everyone's going to do their very best to kind of exploit the music. And there's no one taking care of the artist, and that's where I'm very critical of music distributors, because there's nothing wrong with being a business and wanting to make money, right?
Yeah,
But I have a
sure.
problem when I go, okay, but you're going to essentially force someone to share their IP with you in order to get that, to be on
Yeah.
your platform, to get your protection. No. And then they don't even know. And that's the important piece here. They don't even know.
If you hit rewind a little bit, it's absurd to even think that a business like Spotify or Apple Music or whatever exists, and they make money off of, that they're profitable. Well, sometimes profitable off of musicians. That's all they're doing is just repurposing IP on their own, user interface. But you have to pay a third party to put the music on there. They can't even onboard your own music. And then when is Spotify's most recent thing where they, God, I just saw messaging from them. I think it was on their Instagram or something, where they said, hey, now if you ever see that you're on a playlist that you think might be botted, you can fill out this form and let us know. And it's like, wait, how is that my job? Like, this is your platform, and if you have a bot problem, then your security fucking sucks, and that's all there is to it. Like, this isn't my problem to vet different playlists, to be like, oh, this one looks shady, I'd better write a report to them that nobody's ever going to read. It just that the fact that we've gotten to this point when we're just giving them stuff to resell for more money than what we're being paid for it as musicians is just ludicrous. And the fact that there's this many third parties, and now that these third parties are saying, oh, and you'll give us your AI rights as well.
Well, okay, but then on the flip side of this, okay, because I think because everyone does use different platforms, there's always some kind of middleman, and that's part of where I'm like, well, you can eliminate that with the direct to fans thing. Have your own email list, have control of your audience, okay? But equally, Ben Jordan's on Instagram. Ben has a great Instagram, and we love following, we love seeing what he's up to. But we might not see every post because the algorithm tells us what we're going to see that day, right? So right. A big audience that he has, a very tiny fraction of it's going to actually see his content. Mm-hmm. And that's the same case for all of us. And so, some of us will obviously get upset and be like, well, I've spent all this money. I maybe have paid for ads to market, to build all this stuff. And so then on the flip side, like, at what point does it become our responsibility to be like, well, we do need to read the terms of service. We do need to maybe not use TuneCore. We should sell through our website. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I've been listening to tapes lately. I've been literally just today. I was like riding a tractor around the property listening to tapes. But I mean, obviously, from day one, I think I've always, when my peers as musicians had stars in their eyes from a record contract or from an agency wanting to manage them or something like that, I've been like, nah, fuck that, I'll do it myself. Like, that's always been kind of the way I looked at it, because I want to make money. I want to make a living. The thing I wanted to do the most when I was a kid was make a living as a musician, and unfortunately I was able to do that. But had I signed the first record deals that I was offered with like bigger labels, I would absolutely not have been able to do that. Like, I can say with great certainty that I would have made a tiny fraction of as much as I made. And it's not that I've made like, some wild fortune or anything, but it was enough to make a living for right. decades. And that's like, that's a huge plus. But that's from always reading the between the lines and saying, I don't know if this is the best deal. I think I could do better on my own. And realistically, that's, if you're selling direct, that's how you're doing it. Are you selling any physical stuff, or are you only doing digital?
Yeah, for just the single, we just did the digital download, cool. But it's going to be part of an album. And when we have the album, I'm like, vinyl's doing good. I even did a CD run. Like, my last CD was, a couple of years ago, but I even did the CD, and it was more of like, just because I want to sign something, I want to send something. And so I do, all my order fulfillment and just put in that time and handwritten lyrics, and just to try to have that semblance of some kind of personal connection with the few humans on this planet who give a shit about the creative things that we make. Like, let's put out some effort for
Yeah.
them, but also like it feels really good to get physical things.
Do you want me to pitch you my idea? I think I pitched it on my Discord. So okay, so let's say it looks like this. I don't know, I'm just grabbing random devices off my desk. So a music player that does what a tape machine does, essentially. Like, you could load, and this could be an app as well, but I would love to have a piece of hardware that does it. And I've already sourced out how much it would cost to make one. It's not much because it's just an MP3 player at the end of the day. So a little device they could put music on, or an app they could put music on. And so, for example, if you made an album, you would send the album to that device. It would be encrypted, but not for DRM purposes. It would be encrypted so nobody can just flip through your tracks or put them on a streaming site and listen to them the way an algorithm tells them to. It would be very much like a tape. You would have to fast forward or rewind to go to your next track. So when you made an album, I could skip a track if I didn't like it, but it would be kind of a pain in the butt. And so I would kind of be forced to listen to it. And then guess what? After like the third or fourth listen, I might actually like it a whole lot. And it might become my favorite song on the album, which is ironically the way that that's what I long for. Like, all of my favorite albums in the 90s and early 2000s, it was because I listened to the entire thing, because I wasn't just being fed things on a streaming service. Right. And yeah, and so, I mean, just like take that aesthetic, but then, modernize it to where it could work with Bluetooth devices and stuff like that. So you don't actually have to carry this thing around with like wired headphones or something. Yeah, I mean, obviously I don't think it would blow up and take anything over, but I feel like there's actually, yeah, and you could just release an album for that. And if you wanted to release it for that exclusively, then you would get as much money as you could possibly make, other than the payment fees. You could just sell that encrypted file, and then they could listen to that album. And a month later, you could put it on Spotify, and people could listen to it the shitty way.
Did you ever, when Kanye came out with his stem player, did you see that?
Yeah, I have
it. Did you get? Oh, you got one. We got one too.
Yeah, the Donda.
It fell out of fashion. Okay, he was trying to do something. All right.
Yeah,
I appreciate his direct to fan, approach.
Yeah, I don't regret it at all. I mean, I think the Donda 2 player. Yeah, I mean, it was like, it wasn't that technologically crazy. It was just using the algorithm that everybody was using at the time for that. It's an open source thing, but I mean, still, I love the fact that he was selling an actual player. Like, that's really cool. And I wish that you could load other things onto it in a way that was a little bit more organized. Like, that would be cool. I would like to release an album for it if you could buy it for. It was also a little overpriced. I would want mine to cost about $30.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, say what you want about him. I think he's a prolific producer, and he's done some interesting things. Like, even we covered his Super Bowl commercial because he did just with his phone. I don't know if you saw that, but he did with his phone. He's in the car, and he's like, "Hey guys, I spent all my $2 million on this ad. I don't have money for the rest of it to like have a production, so I'm just letting you know. Go to my website. We're having a sale. Blah blah blah." And he made like $12 million on it.
Yeah.
On just like cutting, because I think that's what it is. I don't know about you. I don't know if you doom scroll on social media from time to time, TikTok. But when you do, just kind of recognizing what you like to watch. And I think for me, and I think for a lot of people, is that we are kind of tired of seeing fluffy stuff, right? We're tired of seeing highlight reels. We really love seeing stuff that feels real. And so I think it goes back to just what we're talking about on how do we create like an experience for someone. So for example, are you working on new music? New song, new album? What do you got going?
Me? Oh yeah. I mean, I'm always working on new music. I just have no intention of releasing it right now due to the dumpster fire.
So when you got the next thing coming out, we'll all be super excited to get something from you and to also support you and just give people an opportunity to support you. If you're watching this, like, don't think, oh, I'm begging for money. That's not what it is. Like, how would you say it if you're
I mean, I resisted Patreon for a really long time because I felt like I was one of those people who kind of, I didn't judge anybody else for having it, but I did feel like it was like begging or something. And enough of my viewers said, why don't you have a Patreon? And then I finally said, okay, this is what and now that the channel runs as like a nonprofit model, I can like draw everything out really well. Like, I can be like, oh, that the Patreon does this. And it's actually, it's incredible. And like with the last video, I actually did an ad read on top of, because Patreon paid for all of the, time and research and video stuff. And the ad read is actually just giving money straight to Ukrainian refugees who need it. And it's like, and it's a significant amount of money. I don't know if I can say it publicly just yet, but I mean, it's in the tens of thousands. It's a lot of money. And it's crazy. It's like, that is so much impact. And that would have not have happened without Patreon. Like, it truly feels like like it's like an invest, since it's a nonprofit. If in a lot of ways, it feels like Patreon, when somebody's like paying their membership, they're investing in something that ends up having way more money go to someone who needs it a whole lot more. And that in January, the whole thing with NAMM, I think we were talking about before we went live, the whole thing I'm trying to do with NAMM, I don't want to spoil it, but it's going to have trying to raise a lot of money for people who need it. And the channel's a perfect vessel to do that with. And Patreon's a perfect way to make that as organic as possible.
What's the plan for NAMM? What do you do at NAMM? Do you run around, say hi to people? Do you shoot content?
I might shoot content this year under an extremely weird pretense. I've been like talked into it, but the last time I shot content at NAMM was 2020, January of 2020, right before the world ended. And it was a disaster, and it was really, it's very different now. I've spoken at NAMM the last 2 years. This year I've been uninvited to speak about anything other than technical music things. So,
we were talking about, we were like, we need to do a panel. We need to do something. They don't want either one of us. They at least think about you. They didn't think about me. Ben tried to get them to think about me, and they didn't want to think about me.
I mean, NAMM, for anybody who doesn't, most people don't realize this, NAMM is a nonprofit organization. It's a 501c3. It's a music education organization. And they actually do a lot of that. They actually do funnel a lot of money to educational institutions. They funnel a lot of money to things like Music Cares, stuff like that, where like, if you are a professional musician and you have a medical emergency that you can't afford and it's putting you out of your house, Music Cares, I can't guarantee that they will, but that's their mission, and they have helped a lot of people. And that's what and NAMM is more than anything. They exist as a nonprofit organization. However, if they're pulling speakers who piss off their sponsors, so in my case, that would be Spotify, that would be tech companies that sponsor them. And if their speakers are saying, hey, don't put your music here, or hey, this company sucks, and then they're pulling the people that they're hiring for education in favor of the sponsors, I would argue I'm not actually salty about it. I kind of like the idea of not having to like speak in front of a ton of people. But like, it's actually going to be, a way different vibe and way less tense. But that makes me think maybe your mission is kind of, maybe you're off path of your original mission. If that's what you're doing, maybe you should become a for-profit company at that point.
All right, I have a proposal, because we're not official speakers at NAMM, but with any luck, we'll both be there, and we set up a meet and greet, because we don't have a booth, we don't have a room, we don't have anything, and we go, guys, meet us at the garbage bin at door 2, at this time. And you do a little meet and greet. I think people would be very excited to meet you.
I would like to do a meet and greet. I mean, we could of course do one at like FL Studio. There's a bunch of like friendly companies that would be happy to host us. But there's always a company that has some bullshit like a green tea energy drink or something like that, or like a THC, or not a THC, a CBD like chocolate bar, or some shit like that. I would love to do one at one of those, to just like make them think that we're promoting their product, but we're really not. We're just using their,
Well, you were wearing, it's funny because this occurred to me. You were wearing a shirt with a different logo on it before we started the live stream. And you're like, I'm not going to wear this. I don't want to, promote a brand, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, you technically did put on the WhatsApp shirt.
So for anybody who has I did. So I am friendly with Haunted Starbucks, which is what this is. Right. Haunted Starbucks is a very edgy, sarcastic, anti-consumer brand, which is kind of a funny thing to say. But yeah, look up their shirts. Their shirts are hilarious. They have ones where I wouldn't dare wear them on a stream, but they have a lot of their clothing line from what the last year has been the ingredients and instructions on how to make meth printed on clothing. Something I really love that they make is a hoodie that says it has like the IRS logo on the front, and it's an inside out hoodie, and you could turn it inside out, and then on the inside out version it says India. It's like a traveling, like it's just very nonsensical absurdist.
Well, and I'm just like, okay, so as a trademark attorney, I mean, like, I'm just gonna have a field day with them all day on the haunted Starbucks, on the
Yeah.
WhatsApp, because it wasn't totally clear to me because you told me the story, and I've been looking at you in the shirt, and I'm like, why are we promoting WhatsApp again?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and they I'm not sure what their thing is because they really they make something once, they make a short run of it, and then they send it to some people that they like, and then they sell it, and then they're done, and then they make more, and they make something else. They don't reprint designs. One of the things that I have from them that was really, really funny, like and it's funny because it actually created some drama. It was a shirt that said Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan podcast, and then it had Sonic the Hedgehog making out with another, I forgot the name of the other character, making out with another Sonic the Hedgehog character, just like necking, just making out behind the Joe Rogan podcast text. And I went on some stream, some like synthesizer talk show thing, and a bunch of people were like, wow, that sucks that he supports Joe Rogan, like, because Joe Rogan's transphobic and this and that. And I was like, you realize that this isn't a real shirt, right? Like, this is
No, and as a company, what they're doing, so smart, right? It's going to be fun. It's going to trend. It's going to go viral, all that stuff. On the flip side, they're going to be dealing with cease and desist, and they're going to have trademark infringement stuff. So anyway, that's a time for a different conversation. Going back to, all right, so if we're gonna promote the what did you say, the THC drink, not that one. We're gonna do the green juice drink booth.
Well, United States Postal Service always has a booth as well. Do you know who else has a booth at NAMM? My favorite, Germany. Just the country. They have a booth at NAMM. So maybe we could just do one there.
Guys, we're going to be at Germany.
Yeah, we could separate it into two sections. Like the west side and the east side.
There's so much possibility. A couple of years ago, I made the decision. I go, look, I was trying to figure out just how to, because I'm a music business course, and I wanted to figure out how to sell it. And I go, what better place to sell it than, amongst tens of thousands of musicians and producers and all that stuff. So I'm like, let me get a booth. So I did the booth, and I'm like, let's network and say hi and let them know about free resources and all that stuff. And it was amazing. They put me like way in the back where no one is to be seen. And I met a ton of people, and it was so cool. And I was like, you know what? The fact that I wasn't really able to like walk around and do what I want to do, I'm like, I don't know that I'm going to do it this way ever again. But I'm down for a meet and greet because I thought that, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, no, I did. I've done last year. I mean, I do meet and greets every year. I did one last year at FL Studio, I think. I think that's usually where I do them, just because that's like the easiest. I don't think. Oh, you know what? I don't know how into synthesizers you are, but in LA on pretty much throughout the entire weekend, but on Saturday is usually the biggest day. Buchla, it's an old school synthesizer company. They have a massive event where other people buy booths, and it's sort of like a piggyback off of NAMM, but like for the edgier, cooler people. And so that this year, since I'm not speaking at NAMM, I'll be able to actually drive into that one of the days, which will be nice.
Yeah, I wanna go learn some stuff. When I was there, it's funny. Who was it? So Ruben Cohen, he's a Grammy Award-winning mastering engineer. He did Happy, right? So for Pharrell Williams, and he's just doing all the things for Netflix and all that. And we've used him for years and years and years, and very friendly. I don't know if you'd call me a friend, but he's a great a friend to a degree.
Yeah.
And anyway, so we were at NAMM, and he's like, "Hey, we're here. Come to our booth." For like days, we were at this booth, and I'm forever gonna give him shit about this because he was speaking, he's walking around, he never got around to come to the booth. I'm like, I'm literally stationary for 2 days.
Yeah, so what happened last year, which is why I'm excited to not be speaking or doing anything like that this year. Is last year I wasn't able to actually walk around and see anything. Like it was just
Yeah.
it just I was booked, because I was there kind of representing Voice Swap and meeting with different rights management companies and software companies and things like that, and then speaking and just I feel like if you're at all a recognizable person in like the music YouTube version or YouTube music world, then when you're at NAMM, you're George Clooney. You're just like, or in your case, Taylor Swift. You're just everybody recognizes you, and so you meet a lot of really friendly, amazing people, but you also don't really get to wander. You kind of are always in a
Yeah.
conversation, or you're hiding in the third floor bathroom stall by Yamaha. That's the least crowded
Interesting.
bathroom.
Interesting. Well, we'll come up with a plan, team, and if the stars align, it could be awesome, and there'll be content, there'll be green juice, and there will be the postal service booth, maybe.
Yeah, or one of the bar things. We could also just hang out by one of the places that sell beers for $14 for an MGD or whatever. But yeah, no,
Well,
I'm
look,
excited.
and there's one thing. So I just to kind of go back, and there's one thing I wanted to mention that we didn't get to in regards to the terms of service. At the very end, in fact, here, if you want to go back to this for 2 seconds, so bring up my screen again. This was the last piece. So it says here near the end of the document, right? They're like, hi, here's all if you sue us, the most that you can possibly sue us for is like $100. You're waiving your rights. It's New York law, all the good stuff. And then the very last thing here, they go, P.S. TuneCore may assign this AI data protection terms and conditions and any of the rights or obligations that you're giving to TuneCore without your consent. So I just want to keep that in everyone's minds who decide to opt into this, that the right to utilize your music, to build AI off of your music, can be given literally to anyone at any time by TuneCore. Thank you.
I didn't even catch that part. Well, how was that protection?
Yeah.
That's like the mob coming over and being like, hey, you know what? You give us some money and nobody's going to rob your place. And then they literally offer free guns out in front of it to anybody who wants to pick one up. They're just like, here you go. Have fun. Pillage. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, final thoughts. Let's go back on the screen. I guess I'll give mine to start. You can tag team, but I have concerns. Okay. So it's my job as an attorney to always look through the worst case scenarios, because I'm like a glorified firefighter. I prevent problems by just being like, hey, this could be a problem. Maybe we don't do it. And so I would be very nervous about using this because, the financial compensation terms are not clear. It's not clear about the usage, right? These partners, the assignees, where your stuff's going to end up, how it's going to be used. And also, I'm just not comfortable giving my intellectual property to another company who may or may not ever pay me whatsoever to build their technology.
I will actually piggyback on that, but I will say that definitely I would not opt into this. However, I kind of just say anything because if somebody sued me and my insurance didn't cover it, I would just disappear into the woods and be fine. so I have no liability. But to hear an attorney say maybe think about before signing that's actually, I feel like that's a big red flag in general, because like most attorneys, whenever they go on the internet, they're like, I'm not gonna no comment just because you're an attorney. But yeah, so hearing you say tread carefully, that means a whole lot more than people might think it means. So that's good.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you did this. I appreciate that you just wanted to kind of cover this in general, and that you just paid attention. Pay attention to your emails. I'm telling you, I get these all the time. And they're like, hey, we're updating our terms of service. And no one pays attention. They usually pay attention when they're like, hey, we're updating our fees. That happened to me I was telling you, I'm like, direct to fans. So I use Aweber, and I've used it for so many years, and I have it for all my businesses. That's just more so going to be a pain in the ass to try to migrate ever.
Yeah.
And so I get an email and they're like, hey, P.S., we're going to double. Literally, we're doubling what you pay now every month. Yeah. I'm like, this can't be right. What? And they're just like, yeah, that's what we're doing. And it was so offensive to me for everyone else who uses this service, and the fact that it's very difficult for me to leave now because I've invested so much into this company.
Sure.
That, you know, I'm almost like, I want to put this company on blast.
That's you know, Vimeo did that. People who are using Vimeo for their websites and stuff to have like the private video hosting. Vimeo just kind of turned around, and I mean, it was way more than double. It was like all of a sudden they just started asking for absurd amounts of money, and everybody was like, well, now my whole, you know, they have like education platforms and things like that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what happens. That's part of the whole e-shitification process, is get people locked in, close off. You know, there's actually a good book if you ever have time to read a book, Choke Point Capitalism. It's a good rundown of how that works, where like Amazon kind of coined that, where they make you pay for Prime, and they make you, you know, they deliver stuff the fastest, and they get you really, like, if you just stop using Amazon one day, your life would dramatically change. It's actually very difficult to just stop using them. And so, but that's by design, and that's you create choke points so people can't leave, and that's what they did to you.
Interesting. So for you, because you mentioned you're like, I'm still in the process, what, a year into this, of migrating your catalog. What's the pain point? Why haven't you done it already?
Yeah, so I mean, the pain point is that I don't trust anybody. The pain point is that, like, you know, what? First of all, like I've talked to other distributors. It's kind of funny because there's another distributor that I talked to the CEO, and I'm not going to mention them publicly, but like I talked to the CEO, and sounded like a pretty good deal, and it's a pretty major distributor, and you had a major problem with them in the past, like from your music. Like, if we're probably thinking the same one, right? And so, and literally hearing you say that, and then watching your videos and your content on it, and I'm like, well, even if I get the red carpet, I'm not okay with everybody not getting the red carpet, because that's your fucking job. You're paying them to give the red carpet, you know? And so it's like, and then I thought about, for a moment, I thought about, well, what if I just said, you know, I don't care. I'm just going to sell my life, sell my publishing, and let somebody else deal with this dumpster fire, and just, you know, take the money and invest it somewhere else. And, you know, but I wonder if I'm going to regret that. I don't know if I'm going to regret having somebody else own the distribution of my music entirely. Part of me also thinks, what if I just slowly started pulling it off of everywhere other than my own website, or, you know, I've even uploaded my music to GitHub and my session files. It's like, let people do what they want with it. But I'm in a luxurious place to be able to do that. Like, you know, I feel like most musicians are, you know, who are living month to month, they can't just pull their music off Spotify. They won't be able to pay their rent. But that's, yeah, a big core part of me, my gut tells me to just get off of Spotify and get off of Apple Music and all this stuff, and just don't be involved with it, because they're toxic. Because they are, right? You know, it's not good for music. And it's like, if I could afford to not do it, but the one problem that I always run into every time I almost get there to delete the stuff off of there entirely, is there's a whole lot of people who don't really care about the politics of it. They don't have enough technical knowledge to know how to download an MP3 and play it on their phone, or it's so far out of their normal workflow that they're just not going to do it. And so like, a lot of my music's not on Apple Music right now. It's gone. And so part of it because TuneCore never restored it properly, because they just didn't do their job right. And I never followed up on it, because I was like, yeah, why don't you just leave it off? I kind of don't want to be part of this anymore. Not a week goes by where somebody's not like, man, I wish your music was on Apple Music still. Like, I really loved listening to it. And it's like, okay, well, now, like, somebody else, you know, yeah, I mean, it sucks. Like, it's funny.
I mean, you have, whether you believe it to be true or not, but a sense of obligation to people, right? The sense of like, you owe them something because they've listened to you. Now, I appreciate, look, trust me, there are times where you put something out on social media and you're like, you know, because you listened to me 100 times, it was something recently, you know, therefore I, you know, should just go like shoot myself, like, if I don't make you happy. And I appreciate that, because I think it's really hard just figuring out how to make these decisions, because you go, well, in one framework there's like the money, and in another there's
Yeah.
the administration. Like I just want like to have my stuff taken care of and know I can trust the person who's representing it as the distributor. And then over here you go, and also my fans. I care about
Yeah.
them. And those are, it's tough to contend between all those things.
Yeah, I mean it's dark because music is so impactful. There's there's a lot of people over the years have reached out telling me that my music has touched them in like really impactful ways, or helped them, or whatever, inspired them to make their own music. And it is shitty to think that if I stand up for myself and other musicians by pulling my music off of these streaming services and stop giving them money to operate and stop allowing them to make money off of my music, by doing that, I'm punishing people, who want to hear my music in the way that they listen to music. And that's quite the conundrum. It's messed up. It kind of just makes me, well, so what I'm doing right now is I'm just sitting on my hands and not doing anything. I'm not taking anything off and I'm not putting anything new on, because I'm just kind of like, this sucks and I hate it. And like, I'll just continue to make music. And
I call it decision paralysis. You have a lot of options. You have a lot of things you could do. Too many options. Not a lot are good.
Right. Can you not handle publishing on Apple Music and other platforms directly? So yeah, I could, but like, do I want to? Do I want to put my music back on Apple Music? Do I want to put my most recent music out on an album on these platforms where like, I kind of don't. I would rather you take my music for free on a torrent and listen to it as much as you want without paying me a dime than you listening to it on Spotify or Apple Music, that's just how it is. Like, I would just rather them not be involved and have a direct relationship with my listeners. Because I think that ultimately, even if you don't want to be part of a Patreon, or you don't want to be part of it, anything like that, it just feels more organic. And also, maybe I'll play shows at some point again in my life, and you'll pay me back that way. You'll come out and buy a ticket and Ticketmaster will take 90% of that. So.
No, right? Let's not even get into that. Let's talk about, what would a Ben Jordan show be like?
I mean,
what do you do?
I toured from like 1998 until 2022. My last show was in 2022, and it's very weird to be 2 years now since my last show. I just passed I literally like know the date and looked, and I was like, oh man, that's crazy. I'm itching for it, but there's just right now for me to perform. I usually have a guitar with MIDI pickups. I usually have a big keyboard. I do a lot of improvised stuff, and so it's usually like half music that people would recognize from me, that's like part backing tracks, part me performing it, and then the other half is like completely improvised. Very live and performative. That being said, the only way that I would play a show, and this is quite the ask, is if I ran my own ticketing platform, which I did have previously. I had one called Showseed that had worked out with a couple shows, but just the pandemic and everything else kind of just ended up with it. Just things stopped working out. But when I used to tour, I used to crunch numbers. Like I used to stay up in the hotel and just crunch every single number to try and figure out who was making the most money off of me touring. And hotels were the number one profiter off of the Flashbulb. Hotels were number one. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is like, but Showseed was great because the way it operated was very simple. For example, I wanted to play a show in Austin, Texas. Every venue in Austin, Texas is greedy as hell because it's Austin, Texas. It's the, keep Austin weird music indie thing. And so I contacted a bar, and I said, or my agent contacted a bar and said, hey, my client has this weird thing he wants to do. If he can sell 200 tickets, will you host the show, and then you'll have 200 people who are over 21 coming and drinking? And they said, sure. And they sold the show out. Basically it passed it was almost like Kickstarter, but for shows, and enough people bought tickets within the first couple of weeks to where we sealed in the show, and we took the hold off and did it. And and it all worked out just fine. And I made way more money that way than I would have made
Yeah.
with the way it usually goes, where a venue offers me a fee to come out and then they just promoted themselves. So
Right. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So you mentioned show seat. So is there, let me ask you this. Besides an in-person, have you ever done like a streaming show, right? So it's all virtual? And if so, any good platforms you know?
no, no, not with music. I mean, I do these, but yeah, no. During the pandemic, it's kind of funny, like how many streaming shows I got offered during the pandemic, and I was just kind of not into it. What I really loved, and what I wish one actually worked out, but one they never materialized. I got contacted a couple times about drive-in movie theater shows, like during that, and I loved that idea. Like everybody just having their own like car bubble, and then me up on the somewhere else. I love stuff like that. One place where I would want to perform no matter what now is just because I feel like I would, if I'm going to do it, I might as well not do it in the ways that all the last shows I performed were at festivals, and I hate playing at festivals, but they were the ones that would like pay me enough to make it worth my time. And, but festivals, you have like other stages bleeding in. And so it was like, it got to the point where I was like, could we not have music on the other stages while I'm playing, like and usually, but that's if I was headlining or something. And it just got really like ASCII and weird because it sucked, because a lot of my sets, I don't want to be loud the entire time. Sometimes I want to be gentle and quiet. And it's like, if you're like playing a gentle, clean guitar solo, and then you have like from like a stage right over there, it just ruins it for everybody. And so I don't want to play shows like that anymore, unless it was like a really unique one. I would much rather play like a seated theater, places like that. Like that would be way more. I just feel like it would allow me to be way more creative, and it would allow my audience to actually, not just go to a bar, to hear something on decent sound systems and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for streaming, and it's something that I'm kind of trying to work towards right now because I moved in a new space and just having control over it, but then also the frequency, and then also being able to just broadcast to places that I just wouldn't travel, right? And then also the cost benefit analysis if it doesn't make sense, and then also just because I run businesses, and so I just have time issues. And so right now I'm kind of searching. I'm just seeing what would make sense, what's the best way to do this, because then just there's technical issues.
A funny thing that I always noticed from touring is that I would have a new album, and I mean this is like before Spotify or anything like that. I would have a new album, I would have the CDs, I would have vinyl, all that stuff, and I would have shirts, and I would have to get the shirts reprinted every 3 days because we could not carry enough, along with us. And then the CDs would last the entire way, and we'd still take half of them home, and most people would buy the shirts. And it kind of made me realize that a lot of touring really was more about people just seeing you in the flesh, just because they've listened to you digitally and they've seen pictures of you and they've maybe seen you on the internet, but just seeing you in person and being able to, and then maybe being able to get a picture with you, or maybe being able to like have a short conversation with you. And that's what is really where the value is, and everything else is kind of complementary to that. I see that as such an awesome opportunity, because that's like, what a good opportunity to like then introduce them to like, some type of playing style or music that like might inspire them, or might make them think a little bit differently about how they listen to my music in the future. Just because I experienced things. I just Corey Henry was just in town here a few months ago, and hung out with him and went to his show. But seeing his show, it like opened my mind up to like, all of a sudden everything that I knew about Corey Henry got like modified, and now I'm like listening to a bunch of George Clinton and stuff like that, and like just because he played a lot of like heavy funk, and I was like, I didn't expect that. I expected like soft gospel-y stuff. So but things like that are another point to be made. There is that I think that if you did I've done at Perfect Circuit. It's a synth store in Burbank, California. I think it's in Burbank. I've done live streams there with Venus Theory, for example. And those, I mean, every single seat got taken, and it could still be a live stream, and they obviously pay because you're bringing people into the store, and you don't have to set up anything, except for your live stream computer and camera, and you just do what you take questions from the audience, and that's so much fun. And you should totally take advantage of you being in Los Angeles when you're at NAMM, because I mean that's like a good excuse to do something like that. And I bet, especially if you partnered up with like another creator or two other creators, you could easily like make a big event out of it, and you don't actually have to, you don't even have to play music, because people just want to meet you and say hi.
Well, look, then the recap. People have a lot to think about in regards to TuneCore. Okay.
Yeah.
We look forward to everyone's thoughts. I'll be rebroadcasting this on the Top Music Attorney YouTube channel later, so we can really think about and discuss it there. Hopefully, if you're going to NAMM, keep an eye out. Someone's going to say something about some kind of booth. Maybe there'll be a live stream now. Who knows? Anything else? I think this has been great, and I'm so glad that we did this.
Yeah, I'm glad you could hang out, because obviously not everybody wants to be watching a stream on Thanksgiving. I thought about tomorrow. I might come back depending on what time I'm done with my normal things. I may. Have you ever had somebody react to one of your videos, make a reaction video?
Yeah, sure. What do you want to react to?
I was thinking about reacting to reaction videos to my videos.
Oh, that's fun.
Like I was like, maybe I'll just do that. That'd be kind of funny, because there's a whole bunch of them, and I'm just like, maybe I'll just pick some random videos and just react to people reacting, and just try and maybe one of them will then react to me reacting to them reacting, which would be a fractal.
Which would be incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I think people sometimes have they're just hilarious, and so you have to just like share that moment with them on screen.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, good. Then it's going to be a great Thanksgiving.
Happy birthday, Fog Machinist. Yeah, I see it's a Thanksgiving birthday. Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. A chain reaction. That's a stream ending comment right there. I love it. But nothing better can be said. Well, yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, nobody should opt into that. I'm gonna take the executive position here and say, don't opt in to that TuneCore thing unless you really just are giving up on all things relating to your content and just would rather watch the world burn. Yeah, you don't need to hit the like button. Hit the like button on my Ben Jordan channel, not on my streaming channel. I don't care if this grows or not. I like having these little nice casual things. All right. Thanks everybody for watching, and thank you. How do you want me to address you? Top Music Attorney, Miss Crystal?
If you want to be
Miss Delgado, Mrs. Delgado.
Miss Crystal is great. Okay. If you want to be formal. We're friends at this point. You can call me Crystal. That's fine.
Okay. All right, Crystal. All right. Yeah. All right. Thanks. And